Off the list at number 10 is Red Dead Redemption 2. And okay. I'm not putting this game on here because I think it's going to be bad. I'm simply putting it on here because of how ambitious that it actually is. When you look at Rockstar's track record, there's really no reason to think that RDR2 is going to be anything less than stellar. However, you still have to keep a few things in mind. First off, this game is going to be following Red Dead Redemption, which is one of the greatest games ever made. That is a huge title to live up to, and I definitely think it can do it, but you have to keep in mind how big the stakes are. Speaking of stakes, you also have to keep in mind that the last game Rockstar released was GTA 5 and GTA Online, which didn't work well at all at launch. If you remember, GTA Online was in such a bad state when it first came out. It was not fully fixed for weeks after release, and it still had issues past that. While Rockstar has stated that the new game won't be as large scale as GTA Online, it will still have online multiplayer modes, so they really have to nail the launch this time around. And of course, I don't think there's any reason to believe that Red Dead 2 won't live up to the hype. I'm just saying that the stakes are so high and Rockstar needs to bring their A game with the launch. This is another game at number 9 that I definitely think will be good, but it still deserves a spot here due to how ambitious it is when you look into the specifics. God of War. The God of War franchise has never been very large scale, and sure, the enemies were big and the set pieces were extravagant, but the God of War formula has always been quite simple. When you get down to its core, it's pretty simple, honestly. This reboot of the franchise is changing just about everything from the storytelling to the tone to the realism to the combat. Everything, guys. It's not uncommon for developers to reboot a series and make huge changes to things that we've seen and we've become accustomed to. We've seen examples of it with 2013 Tomb Raider, Wolfenstein: The New Order, Metroid Prime, and Fallout 3. We've also seen horrible examples of it with games like Sonic 06, Medal of Honor 2010, and the 2009 Bionic Commando. Reboots that change the core gameplay are extremely hit or miss, and while the new God of War game looks very promising, the developers need to be very, very careful and still maintain what the series was and what made it popular. This is a game at number 8 that we have every reason to believe will be good. Just be careful. When you look at all the controversies surrounding it, although most of them are dumb, you have to wonder how much of the game's central concept was put in there just for the shock value in the media coverage. I'm talking about Far Cry 5. It's not a bad thing to add a little shock value to your game, but you need to make sure it doesn't overshadow the game itself. And with Far Cry 5 coming in at a time like now, with a theme involving evil conservative religious cults, you guys know that people are going to be pretty pissed off when it comes out and it starts being advertised. I think Far Cry 5 is going to be excellent, especially considering that Far Cry 3 and 4 were great. But let's just hope that the trend continues and the developers don't try to ride out the controversies too much. At number 7, we have a very, very interesting case. Psychonauts 2. The first Psychonauts game was a cult classic as it didn't sell very well and flew under the radar at release. But it managed to grow and cultivate a huge following thanks to how great and underappreciated it was. Funds for the sequel were raised via crowdfunding, and the game reportedly has a budget of $3.8 million. Psychonauts 2 will also have most of all the same development team as the first one, and it will once again be directed by gaming legend Tim Schafer. However, the concerns arise when you consider how the first game failed. The first Psychonauts received universal praise, but it was still a financial flop. So you have to wonder, will the sequel try to do the same things, or will they change things up in order to hit a mainstream market and not have a repeat of the first? If you are a fan of Psychonauts, chances are you don't want this, as part of what made the very first game so great was the fact that it was so unconventional and unique. And if they try to appeal to a mainstream market, the game will likely lose its touch and originality. So let's just hope that the developers find a healthy balance between what made the first so good and what will help them to not have another failure out of launch on their hands. At number 6, we have Detroit Become Human, due out for a release in the first half of 2018. Detroit Become Human is a very ambitious project by Quantic Dream that will be exclusive to the PlayStation 4. It's a single-player action-adventure game where you follow 3 androids who are loose in the world, and one of them is trying to hunt the other 2 down. One is trying to explore human life, and the other who devotes himself to releasing other androids into the world. The story's pretty interesting, and it will likely tackle some themes that are not very often seen in video games, like what it means to be free and what it means to be human. And the team behind this game was also the ones who brought us Heavy Rain, which was deep. This is also their first game in 5 years, though, and Detroit Become Human is worrying many players who are unsure if they can recapture what made Heavy Rain so good, as this new game seems to be following the same format in terms of gameplay and story progression. Hopefully, Quantic Dream can keep things fresh while also not straying too far from the path of what people want from their games. Cracking into the top 5, you're going to like this. Crackdown 3, get it? Cracking? Top 5, Crackdown. There's a lot riding on the success of this game. It is the sequel to 2010's Crackdown 2, which was an okay game, but it really wasn't anything special. However, Microsoft is really pushing Crackdown 3's hype and advertising it to be one of the best Xbox gaming experiences ever, and they are really pushing the Xbox One X's potential with this game. In fact, Crackdown 3's release was delayed twice so Microsoft could really make sure everything was perfect. And it's supposed to come out in 2016, but it was delayed until November of this year. Then it was delayed till spring of next year, and now we don't even know exactly when it's coming. When a game is delayed this much, that can mean one thing. Well, one of two things. Number one, the game comes out and it's amazing and complete. Or number two, the game gets trapped in development hell and we get another Duke Nukem on our hands. Judging from what we've seen so far, though, Crackdown 3 is on its way to being a great game, but the amount of delays and setbacks, that worries me a little bit. At number 4, we have Dragon Ball FighterZ. Just the fact that this game has the Dragon Ball name on it is enough to make gamers concerned. Dragon Ball is one of the biggest franchises in the world, and people absolutely love it. But looking at all the Dragon Ball games that have been released over the years, it's honestly pretty rare that one comes out that's above average. Now, there have been some great Dragon Ball games, but there's also been a ton of truly terrible ones. While people have gotten their hands on the Dragon Ball FighterZ, and the feedback seems to be very positive for the fighting, if you're a fighting game that doesn't have any real substance to back up the mechanics, people are going to forget about it very, very quickly. Street Fighter V. The developers of Dragon Ball FighterZ clearly nailed the mechanics in the gameplay, but let's hope that the balance, the amount of content, and the lasting appeal is as good as games like Mortal Kombat X, so the game can truly be a success. At number 3, we have Spider-Man. Speaking of franchises that are hit or miss, this is it. It's a game being developed for the PS4 by Insomniac Games, and when you look through Spider-Man video game catalogs, you have some awesome ones. You have Spider-Man 2, Web of Shadows, Ultimate Spider-Man, but then you have some of the worst superhero games ever made, like The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man Friend or Foe, and Battle for New York. The new Spider-Man game looks good, but if we're being honest, so did the other ones, and it's been years since we've had a good Spidey game, and I really, really hope that the upcoming game breaks this trend. I mean, these are the guys who gave us Ratchet and Clank and Sunset Overdrive, so hopefully they can bring Spidey back to his glory. At number 2, we have Anthem, and this game is an extremely split following right now. On one hand, you have people who are super excited to see what BioWare has up their sleeves for a multiplayer RPG, but then you have the people on the other side that have no faith in this upcoming project. Both sides have their supporting facts. This is BioWare we're talking about, the same team that brought us Dragon Age and Knights of the Old Republic, but this is also the new BioWare who gave us Mass Effect Andromeda, one of the most disappointing games to come out in recent memory. So, it should be noted that BioWare doesn't have very much experience with multiplayer games, and the last time they did one, it was Star Wars The Old Republic, which wasn't exactly that successful. Many are calling Anthem an attempt at stealing some of the Destiny player base. I don't know. It's clearly a lot of influence from Bungie's game in Anthem, but we'll have to wait and see how it looks. And at number 1 today, we have Sea of Thieves. This upcoming pirate game from Rare has a lot of people hyped, but like Anthem, it has a lot of people skeptical as well. The game looks beautiful, and it's a very unique concept and idea, but let me ask you guys a very, very important question. When is the last time Rare made a good game, let alone a multiplayer one? For many people, the last truly great game from them was Conker's Bad Fur Day all the way back in 2001. Since then, they've made okay games, okay? The last good original Rare game was a long time ago, and it's hard to ignore that when looking at the hype for Sea of Thieves. I don't mean to sound like a hater. I want it to succeed. They were the ones who they made GoldenEye, people, one of my favorite games of all time, and their games during the SNES and the N64 era hold special places in people's hearts, but due to their track record lately, we're just going to have to wait, just hold off on the hype and see how it actually ends up. There you have it, my friends. Those are 10 overhyped games coming in 2018 that need to be careful. Hopefully they all end up being great for us, the consumer and the gamer. And that's it, guys. I hope you have a great night. I hope you enjoyed the video. Drop a like on your way out, and I'll see you tomorrow for a new one.